Thank you, Rick. I wanted to open just with some remarks on John's brilliant presentation this morning. I don't know about you, but he's sitting in that time machine that he created for us and rocketing through time as we look at the unfolding of the human story was just fantastic. It tells you that we, in a weird sense, we are as gods. We can create stories about ourselves that capture all of that complexity in these beautifully streamlined storylines. But I have to say that as I listen to this story roll out, I could feel myself hydroplaning on a small air of I don't know if it was panic exactly, but I began to think, oh my God, we're traveling at speed and we're moving at, this is a conference about innovation, and one of the reasons innovation matters so much is that we live in turbulent markets, the appropriate response to which is a constant stream of novelty from us. That's necessary because there's a constant stream of novelty coming from everybody else. So we live in a world of tremendous kind of dynamism. And as I listened to John's presentation, I thought, oh man, it's a little like stepping into just a hallway with stuff coming at you with extraordinary speed and with extraordinary power. And I thought, that's where we are right now as humans, is that we're dealing with a situation no humans have ever had to deal with before. I mean, there have always been moments of crisis and turbulence, right? A czar falls. Or a volcano erupts, and stuff happens, but as human beings, we're pretty good at kind of piecing things back together again and then back to a normal, static, stable world. And we've just, in our lifetime, and probably in the last 20 years, John was the term you were using, you were talking about the rate of change, probably in the last 20 years, we've entered a time of pretty constant turbulence. So the point I want to make here, I just want to address the emotional issue here. I think somebody had a question made a comment from the floor about this emotional question. I just wanted to go back to that. It's really tough to live as we live. And one of the reasons it's tough to live as we live, to live in this new envelope where change is just coming at us so ferociously, is that we're not actually, as human beings, as a species, we're not designed to be very good at change. If you look at the kind of the prehistorical to historical record, most of the human beings who've lived on the planet lived as hunters and gatherers, which is to say they hunted and they gathered, and they were migratory. They just wandered around following flocks of animals that were themselves migratory, and in this world we were. And we did this over and over and over again. We spent millions of years being totally predictable. We were ruled by scarcity. We never could develop accumulations of protein sufficient to allow us to break anybody out of the hunting and the gathering. So we couldn't have division of labor, so we couldn't have complexity. So we're ruled by scarcity and dominated by certain structural simplicity. For most of our time on the planet, we just do the same thing over and over again, and then something happens. And we're still not quite sure what it is, but it's astounding. And if you look at it, we can graph it. For most of our time on the species, we're like this, and then once we get the hang of change, it just goes up extraordinarily, steeply. We become creatures who constantly engage in change. But everything changes, so the big question for lots of academics is, what in the dickens changed? What persuaded people to leave hunting and gathering and to begin to embrace change? And the answer is probably domestication of foodstuffs and animals. Those give us now surpluses, and the surplus gives us division of labor, and division of labor gives us the ability to think new things and devise new patterns. And that, I believe, sets up a kind of pattern that is maybe useful to keep in mind. The first moment of this pattern is that we use our surpluses and our new complexity to create still greater surpluses and still greater complexity. We unleash new ideas and practices You know, it might be cities, it might be the idea of hierarchy, it might be priests. And the complexity always has unintended consequences, which are more reckless and more difficult than anything we imagined. When we embarked upon the change, we thought, this will be interesting, this will be good, and we're pretty clear on what's going to happen. And we're right for certain purposes, but what we don't see are the unintended consequences, and the unintended consequences leave us astonished. It's like we've created something it's like a laboratory experiment that just runs out of our control. Now we're stuck looking at a world into which we've introduced an order of dynamism we've never seen before. And the next moment, I think, in this pattern is that we lose our nerve. We go, oh my God, that's it for change. We're not doing that anymore. Just whose idea was this anyhow? Let's just cut it out. Look, we've made a mess of things. And in fact, almost always, you read the historical record, it's almost always the intellectuals who tell us that the sky is falling, that chaos is just around the corner, that the world is just royally screwed up, and now we've really done it. And and I think we're kind of in that moment now where we just think, holy cow, how do we manage this planet? And all of the problems. You know, I love that software you're using, John, that allows us that God's eye view where we're sweeping from one idea to another idea and down from the heavens into something particular and then back up to another piece of the complexity. It really gives a vivid sense of how many moving parts there are. And who can keep track of the concatenation of all these moving parts? I mean, who can even begin to, I mean, we can just kind of document it in some ways, but to anticipate what actually is going to happen is very difficult. So there's always this moment in this chain of moments where we lose our nerve, and then the final piece is we step up, we restore our courage, we develop the ideas and the practices necessary to deal with the new dynamism and complexity we've created, and we're okay again.